Hey guys, this is botkiller, and in today's episode of Being a Successful Musician, I'm going to talk a little bit about the costs associated for an independent band with releasing their own CD. Alright, releasing a CD is not cheap, nor is it easy. It's cheaper and it's easier these days, but it is not cheap and it is not easy. We need to just dispel that belief right now, right out the gate. Just remember this, guys. It costs a lot to make this one little piece of plastic right here. It really, really does. Something that you may not think about very often when it comes to what a musician spends to make a record is what it costs to get their instruments. Instruments are something that we just kind of take for granted. We figure a musician just has them, but the musician has to invest in those instruments in order to be able to make the record. Figure no matter what that the average musician's probably going to spend about $1,500 on their instruments. That's getting something that's fairly good, about mid-range, that's going to hang on and deal with a lot of gigging and recording and them learning on it and various things like that. You might also want to roll a little bit of cost into there for what they may spend on taking some lessons to play that instrument and things like that. And don't forget about the upkeep on that instrument. Strings break, drumsticks break, drum heads get bent and they break and they warp, and everything takes some upkeep. So it's going to cost money over time. So no matter what, figure that the average musician is going to spend, let's just say $2,000 on their gear. Again, that's a low number and it depends on what you play and what you haggle for and things like that, but about $2,000. Alright, so we've got our instruments. Now we need to start recording, right? That should be easy and cheap. Not so. Going into a studio is something that most musicians still end up doing these days. The tools for recording a record have become democratized, and that's a good thing. Software is easy to get now. A lot of it comes free with many computers. But if you don't know how to record yourself, you're not really going to get the best product in the long run. And you can learn and you can still record a good product, but a lot of musicians just don't have time for that. So what do they end up doing? They go into a studio. Now, a studio can range anywhere from someone's home studio to a high-range studio that you might go to that would cost you a little bit of an arm and a leg for every hour that you're there. It really depends on the amount of money that you have as a musician to pour into these things. But average studio time is going to go anywhere from the low price of about $25 an hour, and that's not going to be bad service. It's just you can find it for $25 an hour, going all the way up to $150, $250 an hour. Now you might think to yourself, well, I can get a lot done in an hour. Yeah, you can get a lot done in an hour. But believe me, guys, when you get 5 band members into a studio, and they've all been practicing their butts off and they know their stuff, but now they're in the studio and they haven't been in a studio a whole lot, nerves catch up with you, and it takes time, guys, and it adds up very, 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 very fast. All of a sudden, what you originally were planning for, let's say, 10 hours in the studio turns into 20 hours in the studio. So let's do the math. At 10 hours, at $25 an hour, that's still adding up pretty quickly, isn't it? Now, you're not really going to find $25 an hour studio time very often. More than likely, you're probably going to be paying somewhere around $75 an hour to maybe about $100. 100's about the median, so let's just ballpark, again, for about 20 hours in the studio, another $2,000. So there's another $2,000 into doing our record, and that's low. That's getting somebody to engineer for you and hopefully do the basic levels of setting things up for you and recording and tracking you, but this is not taking into effect maybe somebody who's going to produce your record, or a secondary engineer, or many of the other costs that come in while you're in a studio, such as food and things like that. Okay, so now we've recorded the record, and we think that we're done, right? Well, no, unfortunately, we've still got a good ways to go. The record is recorded, now it needs to be mastered. Now, mastering can really be something that you can find either very cheap through the web, or you could go to a mastering house that might charge a little bit more. On average, mastering is probably going to be somewhere around the low price of $25 for a song, the high price of maybe around $150 per song. Could definitely go higher than that. You probably won't pay much higher than that if you're an independent musician, but you're going to pay somewhere within there. So, if you add that up, let's say we do a 10-track record, we're probably looking at least $250 to, on the average price, what I see for mastering is $45 per song, so about $450 on mastering. So, with our studio time and our mastering, that's starting to add up. So we're almost there, right? Yeah, we've got the music, we need the art. So let's talk about the art. CD artwork is something that you can, again, do yourself. If you're savvy with these kinds of things, you can get templates, you can design the artwork yourself. If you're not someone who can do things like that, you can have CD replication, duplication companies do it for you. Disc Makers offers this, Crystal Clear CDs offers this, various companies like this, which offers CD replication and duplication, will provide these services. It depends on how much you might end up spending in the long run, if it's going to really be something that's worth it for you. If you want to let someone else do it, you might end up spending, at the low range, around a couple $100. At the high, you might spend $500 to $700 having the CD insert done. Depends on how much you can provide, pictures of your band, logos, things like that. So if you're going to end up doing that, you could end up spending, let's say, about $500 on art design for your CD. Now you're almost there, except here's the next big charge, and that is making the CD. So now you have to have the CD made. Now there's a lot of houses all around the US that will make your CD for you, Disc Makers, Crystal Clear CDs, various houses like that. And on average, you're probably going to spend about $1 per CD. Now that may not seem like very much, but you're usually going to get about 500 CDs to 1,000 CDs in an average run. So added up, you're looking at $500 to $1,000. Usually the price break between 500 CDs and 1,000 CDs is so marginal that you might as well just get 1,000 CDs. So you're going to spend at least $1,000, add on some tax, and of course you have to get those things shipped to you. All of this starts to add up, and eventually you're probably going to end up spending about $1,500 to get 1,000 CDs or so shipped to you. You might get about 1,100 on average. So that's a lot of CDs, and actually still a pretty good deal, but again, that adds up. That's about $1,500. So now you have the record, and finally, dun-da-da-da, here it is. Here's our piece of plastic with our music in it and our artwork and all this fancy stuff, and now you got to figure out what to do with it. Now you got to sell it, now you got to get it onto store shelves, you got to push it at shows, you got to push it on the internet and all these kinds of things. All of this is going to add up and take time. Now we can't really quantify how much that's going to cost you, but no matter what, just figure that, again, that's a cost you're going to be incurring. Time spent promoting, you're going to have loss because you're going to give a lot of these things away, guys. I mean, we do. All of us, we give our CDs away for free all the time because our CDs are pretty much business cards with music on them. And we know that. But you got to consider this in your overall cost. So if you spend $1 to $2 per CD making it, if you give it away, you just lost $2 effectively. Now that's okay if you're running this as a business and you keep track of your promotion and things like that, but if you're just a band just out there handing your stuff out, it's going to add up as you start to hand these things out, so you got to be careful with that. And it all starts to really stack up on top of itself. So let's do the math again, guys. Let's figure that on average, a musician's probably going to spend about $2,000 on their gear, training, various things like that. They're going to spend maybe at least another $2,000 to $2,500 in the studio. Then after that, after they've recorded, they're going to spend at least, let's say, about $450 to $500 having their music mastered. Then they may spend another $500 having the artwork done for their brand new CD, depending on how savvy they are when it comes to these things. After that, they have to have the CD made, which all said and done typically is going to cost anywhere between $1,300 to $1,500. So if you add all that up, guys, that's a lot of cost for one piece of plastic. And so the reason that I bring this up is that I really think that we need to dispel a lot of these assumptions that making a CD is just this easy, cheap thing to do for bands now, because it very simply is not. It's not an easy or cheap thing to do. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy, and a lot of money. So, if you're someone who very simply buys music and you're not a musician, just keep in mind that the next time you see a band pushing their CD at a show or something like that, or on the web, and they're saying, hey guys, please buy our CD, consider what went into making that CD And especially consider it when you look at that price tag of $5 or $10 and you think, that's pretty steep. In reality, it's really not. I don't think CDs should cost any more than $10. I think $5 is a great price for CDs. I think $10 is okay, goes a little bit high for what people expect these days. But no matter what, $5 to $10 is really not asking a whole lot when you consider all that work that went into making that one piece of plastic, guys. So please, keep this in mind when you see bands pushing their CDs, and please remember it when you decide to buy something from them, or if you're deciding if you can, if you're on the fence and things like that. Just consider a lot went into making that, and hopefully the product that you get from that band is something that you feel is worth it when you spend that money to give it back to them, because they're going to use that money to continue making music and continue making records and hopefully continuing to be successful as musicians. So there you go. That's just a little overview on what it's going to take you to make a CD or what it takes others. I hope you found it useful. Stay in touch with me, guys. I'm on Twitter, @BrianBotkiller. Get me on my website, @BrianBotkiller.com. And as always, thank you for watching. Keep being successful, and I'll see you next time. Take care.